The explosion threw Marcus Chen against the corridor wall hard enough to crack his visor. Emergency lighting flickered across the Nexus station's diplomatic wing, painting everything in strobing red. His earpiece screamed with overlapping distress calls. Hull breach on level 9. Atmosphere containment failing. All personnel evacuate immediately. Marcus pushed himself upright, tasting copper. His security uniform was scorched along the left sleeve. The synthetic fabric curled and blackened. The station shuddered again, metal shrieking as structural supports buckled somewhere deeper in the superstructure. He was supposed to be at the emergency extraction point 3 levels down. Instead, he stood in a corridor rapidly filling with smoke, listening to something that made his blood stop. Crying. High-pitched. Desperate. Coming from the Karithi delegation quarters 20 meters ahead. The Karithi. The same species whose insurgent faction had just bombed the station's central hub, killing 47 diplomats and station personnel. The same species humanity had been at war with for 6 brutal years. The same species whose ambassador had spat venom at him just hours ago, calling humans parasites who deserved extinction. The corridor groaned. Warning lights intensified. Marcus ran toward the crying. The delegation chamber door hung open, blown off its magnetic locks by the shockwave. Inside, the ornate meeting room was destroyed. Ceremonial tapestries burned. The ceiling had partially collapsed, crushing the elaborate seating arrangement the Karithi had demanded during negotiations. Bodies lay beneath the rubble. Marcus counted 4 adults, their chitinous armor cracked open, blue blood pooling beneath them. The crying came from behind an overturned table. Marcus vaulted the debris and found her huddled there. A Karithi child, no more than 5 or 6 by human equivalent. Her 4 arms were wrapped around her segmented torso, mandibles clicking in rapid distress patterns. Her large compound eyes reflected the firelight in fractured rainbows. She was small, barely reaching Marcus's waist, covered in the soft juvenile chitin that wouldn't harden into proper armor for years. She looked up at him and screamed.
Not from pain, from terror.
'Cause she was looking at a human, the monsters from her nightmares. The enemy who killed her people. Marcus held up his hand slowly. I'm not going to hurt you. She scrambled backward, clicking frantically in Karithi. Marcus didn't need a translator to understand. Get away, monster. Help. The station lurched. A support beam crashed down 5 meters away, sending sparks cascading across the floor. Fire spread rapidly along the tapestries, consuming the oxygen. They had maybe 90 seconds before atmospheric containment failed completely in this section. The child tried to crawl toward the bodies beneath the rubble, still calling out, still hoping someone would answer. Marcus made his decision in the space of a heartbeat. He moved forward, ignoring her terrified clicking, and scooped her up. She fought immediately, all 4 arms striking at his chest and face, mandibles trying to find purchase on his armor. Her chitin was still soft, but the desperation in her strikes was real. He held her firmly but carefully, absorbing the blows, and ran. The corridor was an inferno now. Marcus ducked beneath a collapsed ceiling panel, feeling the heat sear his exposed neck. The child had stopped fighting and gone rigid, probably paralyzed by fear. Her compound eyes were fixed on his face, tracking his every movement. He could feel her heartbeat hammering against his chest, too fast, too erratic.
The emergency stairwell appeared through the smoke.
Marcus hit the door with his shoulder, and they tumbled into the stairwell just as the corridor behind them exploded in a roar of superheated air and metal fragments. Down. They needed to go down. Marcus took the stairs 3 at a time, one hand keeping the child secure against his chest, the other gripping the rail. His lungs burned. The child had started clicking again, softer now, a rhythmic pattern that sounded almost like singing, or praying. Level 7, level 6. The stairwell shook with each massive impact from somewhere deep in the station's core. Secondary explosions, probably fuel lines. The whole structure was coming apart. Level 5. The child's clicking stopped abruptly. She raised one small arm and pointed behind them. Marcus turned and saw it. A section of the stairwell above them was collapsing, 50 tons of reinforced steel and composite materials tumbling down in a cascade of destruction that would crush them both in seconds. He threw himself forward, diving through the doorway onto level 4 just as the entire stairwell behind them ceased to exist. The impact of the collapse sent a shockwave that lifted them both off the ground and slammed them into the opposite wall. Marcus's vision went dark at the edges. Pain exploded across his back and ribs. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard alarms, screams, the groan of dying metal, and beneath it all, pressed against his chest, the child's heartbeat continued. Still alive, still terrified.
He forced himself up.
The child stared at him with those massive compound eyes, mandibles open in what might have been shock. Her small body trembled. Marcus adjusted his grip carefully and started moving again. The evacuation point was close now, maybe 200 meters through the central concourse. He could hear voices ahead, organized shouts, the thrum of emergency transport engines. He stepped into the concourse and immediately felt dozens of eyes lock onto him. Humans. Station security, military personnel, civilians, all staring at the human guard carrying an enemy child through a disaster zone. Someone raised a weapon. Marcus kept walking forward, steady and calm, cradling the child against his chest. He made no sudden movements, made no excuses. Just continued toward the evacuation shuttle with the same measured pace he would use crossing a parade ground. A security officer stepped into his path, assault rifle raised. "Sir, that's a hostile alien. Regulations require she's a child." Marcus's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "And she's evacuating with us." The officer didn't lower his weapon. Behind him, more guards moved into position. Marcus could feel the tension spiraling, could sense fingers tightening on triggers. The child must have felt it too because she burrowed harder against his chest, clicking that prayer song again. A voice crackled over the public address system. "All personnel to evacuation shuttles. Immediate departure. This station will experience total structural failure in 4 minutes." The officer's eyes flickered between Marcus's face and the child. "Orders are orders, sir." Marcus looked at him steadily. "Yes, they are. And my orders are to protect civilian lives during emergencies. All civilian lives. Are you going to shoot me to stop that?" The moment stretched. Someone in the crowd whispered that the child might have a bomb. Someone else pointed out that the Carithian insurgents used children as weapons. Fear and hatred hung in the air thick enough to choke on. The child raised her head and looked at the officer. Those massive compound eyes fixed on him with an expression that transcended species. Terror. Confusion. A wordless plea. The officer lowered his rifle. Marcus nodded once and moved past him, through the parted crowd toward the shuttle. He climbed aboard and found a seat in the corner, strapping in carefully while keeping the child secure. She hadn't let go of his uniform, all 4 small hands gripping the fabric like lifelines. Around them, other passengers stared, some with anger, some with confusion. One elderly woman with something that might have been approval. The shuttle doors sealed. Engines roared. Through the viewport, Marcus watched Nexus Station tear itself apart in a cascade of explosions and debris. Somewhere in that destruction, were the child's family, her delegation, everything she knew. She clicked softly against his chest, and Marcus held her a little tighter. The shuttle pushed away from the dying station, accelerating hard toward the nearest diplomatic vessel. Standard protocol dictated they would dock with the human carrier Resolute, where medical teams and security would be waiting. Where questions would be asked and reports filed. Where people would want to know why a human guard had risked his life for an enemy child. Marcus didn't have a good answer for them yet. He just knew that when the moment came, when the choice appeared between abandoning a terrified child or protecting her, there had been no choice at all. There had only been action. Instinct. The fundamental requirement that separated humans from monsters. You protected the helpless. Even when they looked like your enemy. Even when they belonged to a species that wanted you dead. Even when every tactical consideration screamed that you were making a mistake. The child's clicking had quieted to almost nothing now, a soft rhythmic pattern against his chest. Marcus looked down at her, at those alien eyes that held depths of fear and loss he couldn't begin to comprehend. She looked back at him, mandibles moving slowly, tentatively, and then, so quietly he almost missed it, she made a sound that wasn't clicking at all. It was softer, warmer. A sound that might have been trust beginning to form in the space where terror had been. The shuttle's internal lights reflected off her compound eyes like stars. Marcus settled back in his seat and prepared for whatever came next. Outside, Nexus Station exploded in a brilliant cascade of fire and metal scattering debris across the void. Inside the shuttle, a human guard held an enemy child, and neither of them looked away. Resolute loomed ahead, massive and gray, bristling with weapons. Its hangar bay doors were already open, emergency lights pulsing in patterns that meant danger. Protocol. Security measures. The child would be taken from him the moment they docked. Quarantined. Questioned if she could speak. Held as a potential enemy combatant or witness or intelligence asset. The bureaucracy would grind forward regardless of age or trauma. Marcus could already feel her grip tightening on his uniform, some instinct telling her that safety was temporary, that the human who had carried her through fire might be the last kindness she would know. The shuttle decelerated hard, aligning for docking. Around them, passengers unbuckled and prepared to disembark. A woman across the aisle leaned forward slightly, catching Marcus's eye. She wore the insignia of a medical officer, and her expression was complicated. "That's a brave thing you did," she said quietly. "Or a stupid thing, hard to tell the difference sometimes." Marcus didn't respond. The medical officer nodded slightly, as if he'd confirmed something. "They'll take her from you. You know that. Security will want her isolated and assessed. There's no scenario where you get to stay with her." "I know." Marcus's voice was flat.
But you did it anyway.
"Yes." The woman studied him for another moment, then glanced down at the child still pressed against his chest. "She trusts you. That's rare. Karithi children imprint on protectors after trauma events. It's a survival mechanism. If you're taken away suddenly, the psychological damage could be severe." Marcus looked down at the child, at those huge compound eyes watching him. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you make sure someone competent handles the transition. Someone who understands xenobiology and trauma response. Someone like, say, the medical officer who happens to be filing the initial assessment report." She stood as the shuttle jolted into the docking clamps. "Stay close during disembark. Let me do the talking." The shuttle doors opened to chaos. Security teams in full tactical gear waited at the base of the ramp, weapons ready. Officers shouted orders. Medical personnel rushed toward injured passengers, and standing above it all, watching from the hangar bay's command platform, was someone Marcus recognized even from 50 meters away. Admiral Catherine Zhao, commander of the Resolute. The woman who had once told Marcus that compassion was weakness in wartime, and that soldiers who couldn't make hard choices didn't deserve the uniform. Their eyes met across the hangar. The Admiral's expression revealed nothing. She raised one hand and the security teams immediately stood down, weapons lowering but not holstering. A path cleared through the chaos, leading directly toward the command platform. The medical officer touched Marcus's shoulder lightly. "That's not standard protocol." "No," Marcus agreed. "It's not." They walked forward together, Marcus moving carefully to avoid jostling the child, the medical officer maintaining position at his side like a shield. Personnel stepped aside as they passed, creating a corridor of stares and whispers. Marcus kept his eyes forward, his breathing steady, his arms secure around the small alien who had somehow become his responsibility. They climbed the stairs to the command platform. Admiral Zhao waited at the top, flanked by her security detail. She was a small woman, barely reaching Marcus's shoulder, but she carried authority like a weapon. Her uniform was immaculate despite the emergency. Her eyes were steel. She looked at Marcus, then at the child, then back at Marcus, Sergeant Chen. Her voice carried clearly despite the noise around them. "You disobeyed evacuation protocols. You endangered yourself and others. You brought an unvetted alien lifeform onto my ship without clearance or proper quarantine procedures. You created a diplomatic incident that will have repercussions reaching the highest levels of government. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Marcus stood at attention as much as he could while holding the child. "No excuse, sir." Zhao's expression didn't change. "That's not what I asked." The hangar had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see how this would play out. The child clicked softly against Marcus's chest, sensing the tension. Marcus met the Admiral's eyes. "She was alone, sir, trapped in a collapsing station. I had the ability to help, so I did. Her people killed 47 of ours today." "Yes, sir." "Her government has declared humans an evolutionary mistake that should be eliminated." "Yes, sir." "Her species insurgents specifically targeted civilian areas in this attack. They wanted maximum casualties. They wanted to send a message written in our blood." Zhao's voice was cold, clinical. "And you decided to risk your life to save one of them." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say that would make this better or worse. He had made his choice. Now he would face the consequences. Zhao stepped closer. Close enough that Marcus could see the fine lines around her eyes, the gray threading through her dark hair. Close enough that he could read the expression she was carefully not showing to the watching crowd. She looked down at the child. The child looked back at her, mandibles moving in what might have been submission or fear. For a long moment, the Admiral simply studied the small alien, her face unreadable. Then she did something Marcus would never have predicted. She reached out slowly and touched the child's head, just above the compound eyes, in the same gesture Marcus had seen Karithi parents use in diplomatic footage. A gesture of protection and acknowledgement. The child went completely still. Then she clicked 3 times rapidly, a pattern Marcus didn't recognize, The Admiral withdrew her hand and looked at Marcus. That was foolish, Sergeant Chen. Yes, sir. Reckless and against protocol. Yes, sir. It's also exactly what I would expect from someone wearing that uniform. She turned to the medical officer. Get them both to Medical Bay 2. Full examination and decontamination. The child is to be treated with the same priority as any injured personnel. No one enters that bay without my explicit authorization. The medical officer saluted. Yes, sir. Zhao's gaze swept the watching crowd, her expression hardening. If I hear that anyone on this ship treated that child with anything less than professional courtesy, I will personally ensure they spend the rest of their service cleaning plasma conduits on remote mining stations. Are we clear? A chorus of yes, sir echoed through the hangar. The Admiral nodded once and turned back to Marcus. Her voice dropped slightly, meant only for him. I spent 6 years losing soldiers to this war. Good people, people I cared about. People who deserve better than dying in the dark fighting an enemy that hates us for existing. So believe me when I say I understand the desire to hate them back, to see them as nothing but the enemy, to treat their children the way they've treated ours. She paused, and for just a moment something raw showed in her eyes. Something human and hurting beneath the Admiral's mask. But if we do that, she continued softly, then we become what they say we are. And every soldier who died protecting the innocent died for nothing. She straightened. Take care of your charge, Sergeant. And once she's stable, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about chain of command and proper procedure. Marcus managed a slight smile. Looking forward to it, sir. Zhao's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes might have been approval. Or maybe relief. Or maybe just bone-deep exhaustion. She waved them toward the medical bay, already turning to deal with the next crisis. Marcus followed the medical officer through the corridors of the Resolute, acutely aware of the stares they received. Some curious, some hostile, some carefully neutral in that way that meant judgment deferred but not forgotten. The child had gone quiet again, her heartbeat steady against his chest, her 4 small hands still gripping his uniform. Medical Bay 2 was a small private facility, usually reserved for senior officers. It was clean, quiet, well-equipped. The medical officer gestured Marcus toward an examination table and began pulling up screens with alien physiology data. I'm Dr. Sarah Keating, she said, pulling on gloves. And you're about to learn more about Karathi juvenile care than you ever wanted to know. Marcus carefully sat on the examination table, keeping the child secure. Is she injured? Keating pulled out a medical scanner and ran it over the child's body, frowning at the readings. Bruised. Traumatized. Dehydrated, but no serious physical damage.
You got her out fast enough?
She looked up at Marcus. Let's try getting her to sit on the table next to you. Don't force it. Just offer. Marcus slowly, carefully began to loosen his grip. The child's clicking intensified immediately, all 4 arms tightening around him. She quieted slightly. He waited, counting his breaths, then tried again even more gradually. This time, after an extended moment of hesitation, the child allowed herself to be placed on the examination table, but she immediately grabbed Marcus's hand with 2 of her arms, holding tight, mandibles clicking in soft distress. Keating nodded approval. Good. That's progress. Now stay exactly there while I work. Don't move unless I tell you to. The examination took 20 minutes. Keating worked with practiced efficiency, explaining each step to both Marcus and the child, speaking calmly even though Marcus suspected the child couldn't understand the words, but tone mattered. Intent mattered. The child remained tense but cooperative, watching Keating with those huge compound eyes, never once letting go of Marcus's hand. She's physically healthy, Keating said finally, putting away her instruments. The psychological damage is harder to assess. Karathi children form strong attachments to their family groups. Losing them all at once is catastrophic for their development. They can spiral into catatonia, or aggressive behavior. The fact that she's remaining calm means she's replaced her family unit with you. Temporarily, at least. Marcus looked down at the small alien gripping his hand. How temporary? Depends. Days, maybe weeks. Once she realizes she's safe and finds other Karathi to bond with, the attachment should fade naturally, but until then, separation will cause significant distress. Keating met his eyes? You basically just adopted an alien child, Sergeant. I hope you're ready for that responsibility. I'm not. No one ever is. Keating pulled up another screen. The Resolute is carrying a Karathi ambassador who was negotiating separately when the attack happened. Ambassador Talshef. She'll want to see the child once she learns about her. That's protocol. Marcus felt the child's grip tighten on his hand. When? Soon. I've already sent the report. Keating hesitated. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Talsheth isn't just any ambassador. She's the Queen Mother's sister. She has direct authority over all Karithi diplomatic and military operations in this sector. If she decides this child is a security risk or an inconvenience, there's nothing we can do to stop her from taking custody. The child clicked softly, still looking at Marcus. He felt something twist in his chest, some instinct that had nothing to do with training or orders. She won't hurt her. You don't know that, but I know what I saw in that station. That child was loved. Someone cared for her, dressed her, prepared her for a diplomatic event. That's not how you treat someone disposable. Wherever she goes, whoever takes custody, they'll want her alive and well. He paused. I have to believe that. Keating studied him for a long moment. You're a good man, Marcus Chen. That's going to make this harder than it needs to be. Before Marcus could respond, the medical bay doors opened. Admiral Zhao stood in the entrance, and beside her was an alien that made the child look tiny by comparison. Ambassador Talsheth stood nearly 3 meters tall, her chitinous armor a deep iridescent blue that seemed to shift colors in the light. Her forearms were adorned with ceremonial scarring and diplomatic markings. Her compound eyes were massive, each one the size of a human fist, reflecting everything in fractured precision. She wore robes that marked her status, and she moved with the controlled grace of someone utterly confident in their power. She looked at the child, and her entire body went still. The child saw her and began clicking frantically, a rapid pattern that sounded like questions and fear and desperate need all mixed together. She released Marcus's hand and scrambled toward the edge of the examination table, all 4 arms reaching toward the ambassador. Talsheth moved forward in 3 quick strides and scooped the child up, holding her close with 2 arms while the other 2 swept over her body, checking for injuries with a precision born of instinct. The child burrowed into her embrace, clicking and clicking and clicking, and the ambassador responded with the same patterns, faster, more complex. For nearly a full minute they remained locked together, speaking in their alien language, and Marcus felt something settle in his chest. Relief, certainty. Whatever happened next, the child would be cared for. Finally, Talsheth raised her head and looked at Marcus. Her mandibles clicked once, deliberately, in a pattern that needed no translation. She had questions, and Marcus would answer them all.